Um, yeah. So we should be. Let me just see if just make sure it's coming back. It is. Yep. Anyway, so this live session is going to be about reviewing the recent image challenge that we did on the Discord server, which was a plate cleanup of a shot from Krakow, and it's from the main square there. And the brief was, if I just switch over to that, this is actually one of Katrina's works. But let's have a look. Where is the challenge?
I haven't opened as well, Conrad. All of them.
You what? What have you opened?
All the images.
Every image ever?
Yes.
Nice. Okay, so here is the brief. So this was the original image, the brief being that we needed to remove the scaffolding through here, all of the sort of signs of active life, the humans, birds, that sort of thing. And it has to be, the aim is to get it to a visual effects standard. So that means even these reflections need to be modified to reflect that this person isn't actually there and that we're physically reflecting the background environment. So I'm just going to jump in and grab some of these submissions. So let's...
Right now it would be best to just go to the square and retake the pic. Like, now it's so empty in there, it would be so easy.
Yeah. The... to be honest, quite often you will have reference photography, and if there's a particular location that they know needs to be cleaned up, they'll set up a tripod and they'll take several photos from that one location, and then they'll do a median average, which basically takes like you can have someone move through the scene and it will take the pixel that basically doesn't have that person there, so it automatically gets rid of them. But I'm gonna start with
the good old frame median.
Yes. There's so many YouTube videos on how to median remove, remove yourself from a scene with that filter. So this is a submission from Lasma, and I wanted to just start with this because I just saw Lasma, you've just jumped in the server, so thanks for joining. Let's see if... Just going to try and get it back to the correct color profile. I can never remember which one it is. Convert, here we go. We'll see if this works. No, that's alright. Okay, so let's have a look at this. I'll just bring in the original as well over the top. Okay, great. So now I can zoom in and have a look around. So for anyone who's joined us more recently or watching this, the idea is to replace the people with the original plate. And it doesn't have to always look exactly the same, but we want to be as non-destructive to the original plate as we can. So the first thing we'd normally do is we would actually denoise the plate so that we're working on a denoise plate, and then we'd add the noise back afterwards. But in this case, that's just a technical process. Most plates in visual effects already denoised, so we don't need to to do that. In here, I think you've done a pretty good job with this section. It is a little bit blotchy through behind the bike there. If we compare that to some of the others, though, we do actually have some random stains. So I think that would be okay. The only thing that sort of bugs me is maybe these two sort of smudges. I would recommend trying to just have one of them, or have them not be like on top of each other. Cool, so let's have a look further. The people here, I'm sort of leaving till wait a second, just leaving them till last. Alright, so this is pretty good. The only thing here is that we have this halo down the edge here, which you can see when we switch it on and off. There's kind of a bright edge through there, so there is a little bit of softness through there, but at least most of your lines are all matching up. We don't have anything that's really standing out as an error through there. Possibly the colors through here need to be adjusted, because remember his pants are brown, so his reflection is going to be warming up the ground beneath. Yeah, hey Ludo, thanks for joining, man.
Hey Ludo.
So just remember that like through here you can see that is clearly his pants are reflecting on this dark area, which is warm, and then you've done well to replace that and make sure that you've cooled it down and brought the sort of tones of the original image without him there. So all of this in the background here looks good. What you should always do is grab a levels or curves, it really doesn't matter, and just expose your image up. Obviously I'm using the 8-bit JPEG that was submitted to the Discord server, so ideally we'd review this in 16-bit, which would mean we wouldn't get this banding through here, but that's okay. Yep, you've done well to reconstruct this. The only thing I would say in that area is that you have a little bit of a bend let's go here, in this edge through here, so it would probably be a lot straighter like that. So these sorts of things I'm because we don't know the actual oh, we can't hear you, Lasma. Yeah, because I guess you've muted. No, we should be able to hear you. Maybe your mic's not working properly. Anyway, see if you can fix it, and then we can chat. But because we don't know what the end use of this plate is, we can't really know whether we need to be really anal about the position of that little element, or whether a slight bend is fine. I would say that at sort of fitting it to the screen, we have plenty of like it's fine back there. There's no problem with what you did. Really, it would be these people here and the scaffolding that would be the main concern. All of that's pretty good, that's fine. Through here, I was expecting most people to not detect this because of the angle here. So we have, if I just draw on it, so let's say this is our ground plane, and we have our eye here looking at at these people, and the people out here. our eye is seeing sort of at a very glancing angle to the ground here. So the reflections are increasing as we go into the distance, and they become more reflective essentially. So here, when you've replaced the people here, you've replaced their immediate shadow, but in actual fact, much of this element through here is actually a reflection of their dark clothes. If they were in lighter clothes, their reflection wouldn't be quite as intense. So what you want to do is also make sure to lift some of that out as well, to just sort of mitigate that change in luminosity. So you have done it here because it's more obvious that this should all be a constant reflective nature. So, not too bad. So what I like about this is, and I know that you've had some coaching from Ian, and that's really helped you, I'm sure. What I like about your submission is that you've not just replaced everything around these people, like this whole area. You've only replaced the excess essentially that you need to, and you've left as much as the original plate there as possible. So that's always a really good idea, because you just want to leave as much of the original plate as possible. Cool, so let's have a look in here. This is actually really good, because as far as I remember, we didn't actually... No, we did say to remove that, so that's good. And let's have a look. Yeah, this is awesome. I love that. I would love to also have had the 16-bit file to really lift those shadows and have a good look inside there. Cool. Again, here we have a bit of a raise in the architecture. If you look at that, see how straight that is? That's straight, and you've just got tiniest bit of raise. And there's a bit of a blue splotch there, but I think that's probably just the JPEG artifacting. Just gonna check the chats. Cool. So let's have a look at the top section here. So this is where replacing brick on building is notoriously difficult, because you can't take something from even say here. If this was a fully sharp or a bit sharper of a plate, we wouldn't necessarily be able to take these bricks on the right hand side and replace them over here, because they're already further in the distance, so they're softer, and we could bring them to the front, but they won't have the same sharp quality, and then lining up all of the brick layers and all that can be an absolute nightmare. So that's partly why I picked this example. So let's have a look here. So this would be where I would recommend going through and just making sure that you're leaving as much of this original pipe as you can, because here you can see you've replaced a lot of it. So that's something to go back towards. In here, we've got an issue with the repeating elements. So let me just show you what I mean. I'm just grabbing, where is that value? Okay, it's there. Okay. So yeah, see see these two marks here? We've got 3 splotches of them, and we can see also the color change where we've got a repeating element. We've also got it sort of there and there. Well, you can't really see that. Go like this. So sort of that element there, that element there, that element there. Now, to be fair, you don't necessarily have to crank the curves like that, but I can definitely see that through here we've got some splotches that are sort of continuing across in a consistent way. So to fix that, what I'd recommend doing is set a layer to color. Where's color? Down here. And then sample the color that you want to just change it to. And then if you paint in there like this, and I'm going to be a bit more rough and a bit more broad stroke than you should be, but you can see that with that sort of quick paint over, if I zoom right in here, see how that's just blending in a lot better. There's also a luminance issue because certain wavelengths of colors also appear brighter. So you might want to do the same thing with a luminosity layer and just bump it down a little bit. And then in terms of the actual content, all you really need to do is go with a clone stamp and just change a few of them. Obviously, if we could see very clear brick lines, you would want to make sure that you're cloning the relative perspective. But at this distance, we can pretty much just sort of paint like that and just get rid of anything that really stands out as potentially repeating. And that'll help. Right, so let's have a look up here. That looks good. Oh, nice. You've actually gone and replaced that whole top piece. Which, yeah, I guess because this is technically scaffolding, so we had to replace and rebuild something up there. So really, I think in a plate cleanup sense, this top section would require a little bit more thought from the brief, because removing this element and leaving that, you would also have to remove a lot of the shadow in here, and it probably just wouldn't be really worth the story point. So something like what you did is actually pretty good, because it's in keeping with the rest of the architecture of the shot, but kind of removing the issues that we had with that plate. You do have a bit of a highlight around here, though. Alright, so lastly, let's have a look at these humans. Pesky humans that we want to get rid of. So I think the through here is really good. There's a bit of interpretation here because there's so much happening that needs to be replaced. So, like, what is the luminosity? What is the color and the sort of texture that's going on there? And really, I think the major issues would be that some of these lines don't quite match up. So you want to make sure that when you do this sort of work, you want to come through and either create those grid lines like I showed you in the last live stream with Ian, and create a couple of these guides like this to make sure that, where is it going, like that, I think, and then make sure that when you replace them, that all of your new brick lines line up, particularly for this kind of foreground content, because we have a very obvious mismatch here. So you've done well to match these brick lines through here, but then this feels very painted in terms of the quality is quite painted. We don't have the same sharpness and contrast of the bricks over here as we do in this area. We don't have the same contrast and sharpness and detail as we do over here. This is actually where, if we do this little this frequency separation trick, we can separate these out, and you can work on the shadow details and then replace the top content. So let me just go through and set it up. So we're just going to get rid of the top features like that. We go, where is it? Image. So this is the process that I showed you guys in the last live stream. So we basically just we paint two duplicates of our layer. We blur the bottom one, and we basically subtract the bottom one from the top one through this apply image filter. And it's a pretty common technique amongst photo retouchers for models, and it allows us to basically separate the two layers so that we have our top detail layer and our underlying sort of blurred layer. So now what we can do is potentially just example over there, and we can paint in just that top layer of detail. So let's actually let's duplicate that and turn off the original one. And let's just grab this section through here. So then with this, we can then distort this and line up these edges. There's better ways to do this particular process, but I just wanted to sort of show you the general sort of idea of lining them up. There we go. So with that detail in there, if we just use it for this section, which is the only section I was really trying to line it up with, you can see that it's just adding a little bit of that detail back in, and we don't have to worry about the lines. We can paint the lines and on the underlying layer. So so that's actually a really great way in general of getting rid of stuff like this. So on this underlying layer, I can come in here and I can just paint out, or let's say with dodge and burn, I can just come through and just lift these areas. Let's see, let's go midtones. No, that is. So I can come through here and I can lift that dark sort of brick. If there's, for some reason, they want to reduce the distraction of that layer, and all I'm doing is affecting this blurred layer and not affecting the detail on top. So when I come through and paint over here, I'm just doing this, and then the detail on top is staying exactly the same. So, yeah, that's no problem if the mic's not working. I've had issues with my webcam lately, just glitching out. So, yeah. So, all right. So I'm gonna find another one. We're not gonna have time to sort of review everyone, but if you have if somebody has a specific issue with their particular submission, they want me to check it out, I'm quite happy to look at it. I have to look at all of these still and really see who has done the best technical job. Let's grab Alexandra's image and let's see what that looks like. Oh, no, maybe not. Seems that seems like Alex has submitted a lower res version of it, so I'll stick with the ones that are full resolution. Here we go. Alright, cool. So this one's from Roll, I think his name is, or Roel. Let's have a look at it. Let's just see, where's our original plate? There we go. Get rid of those. Okay. Alright, same thing through here. We have the same kind of repeated splotch, but you've also got a bit of softness through this side, which what we ideally want to do is leave all of this brick by itself, and essentially if we take your layer on top, and if I just mask it out, what you want to be doing is, once you've done your clean patch, you want to jump in and basically paint the patch in only where it's needed. So like this. And then if you have sort of lots of lines going around, like say here, 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 like, it doesn't make sense to have the stuff in between, so you can sort of replace that whole area. But really what I'm sort of referring to here is we don't want to just blanket replace this edge here. We want to leave as much of the original plate intact as we can. And just like, let's paint that down here. We probably do want to get rid of this darkness because it looks like either a shadow or a wire. And this actually highlights where your patch is a little bit different to the background wall, because the colors are a little bit different and the luminance is a bit different. So, like, really, I mean, plate cleanup is such a meditative thing. It's just put your headphones on and just look at your own work and go, does it look realistic? Is there any blurriness? Is there any mismatch? That kind of thing. So you can see there, you know, just even if we replaced this entire section through here and just didn't replace that edge, that's going to feel a lot better and just going to be less destructive. Yeah, let's move on. So again, same thing here. We've actually got this moving. Oops. So this little structure here should be left alone, and we should just be removing the cable from around it, or the post. There shouldn't be any unnecessary changes. If there are changes to the underlying plate where it doesn't really make sense to have them, then like that just simply won't get past. So this is really good. I think this is about as accurate to what is actually under there as we'll get, and you've done well to just remove the structure, the little carving that was on the edge there, because that would have been a nightmare to remove the shadow. The one thing that, or two things about this. One would be the top piece here shouldn't actually move because there's really no reason for it. Maybe maybe in an architectural sense, without these structures, it doesn't look right, which is fair. But in general, you wouldn't want to move that. The other thing is your perspective of this element looks like it's come from somewhere closer in the scene. Where's it come from? Maybe it's come from down here. Yeah. So you've used this element and placed it up there, but because of the change in perspective, it really jars the eye. So if we look at our perspective here, if I drag this down and then drag this down, and as you can see that these are all converging down here somewhere. And if I follow this edge out, notice how this is sort of diverging from the piece below. So you just want to be careful about that and make sure that you distort your images appropriately. So to do that, you'd probably just, really it's this edge through here. Let's grab this. I'll just grab some of the sky. There we go. So we would just distort that top edge down to match the rest of the perspective. So something like this. So, and then if I just paint back in the sky here, I'm just doing this really quickly for demonstration. Oops. Right, so there's that, and then there was your original. Where is it? No. Just have to go back. So there. So we go from that to that. You can see how that just feels a little bit more in the perspective of the building. So keep that in mind whenever you move elements from one part of the image to another part in terms of depth. If they already have strong perspective lines, then you need to adjust and distort the image accordingly. Okay, so let's move on, have a look at some other areas. Okay. Oops. Cool. So again, in here, I'm not sure why there's anything being replaced up here, because there wasn't anything really to replace. But what you can do, again, really quick and easy if you do realize you've got something in there, is just mask it straight back out, come back down to these people and just get rid of them. And obviously this content is shifted, so you need to rebuild this in an accurate sense so that it actually continues to the ground. So while I'm in here, if you guys have any questions, like just shout out, because I'm really just going through reviewing these things, and obviously I'd rather be answering your questions if you've got them. What we're going to do after this challenge is we're going to add another element to the scene and also make a modification to this building. So to be like, we've gone from plate cleanup to set extension and like a projection patch kind of workflow, and that's just to practice another really common skill, because to be honest, matte painting is only 10 to 20% at the very most when you're working in full-time visual effects is actually hero matte painting. It's not very often that you'll get those big hero shot matte paintings. A lot of the time it is this kind of work. It's maybe not plate cleanup, but set extensions, a little background in the say like a mountain in the background, or some kind of extension to the natural environment. A lot of that sort of stuff. Also CG paint overs, doing things like grunge and adding that kind of, that additional level of realism that you get from photography. So let's have a look through here. Cool. So again, it looks like you've I think this is just generally the approach that Rails has taken with this, is just to create a new patch for that area that matches the perspective and just place it in and grade it. And I think that's working really well. What I like is that I can actually see the reflection, the lightness change from here to here in this ground patch. You can see that behind this girl here, there is a brightness there. You can see the reflection of this light pillar in the wet surface. So it stands to reason that we would also get that same reflection through here, and we get that same lightness on the ground. So there's some good work there. The bigger issue is that we've got kind of shift in scale. So you can see here, and also quality, because it looks like he's used an element from the foreground here potentially and moved it into the background and maybe created some additional patch pieces. But we want to keep the spacing across the ground plane. And again, in this sense, we didn't really know what the final use for the plate was going to be. So there are instances where this wouldn't matter. There are instances where this would matter a lot. For instance, if we were doing some reprojection work in here with these arches, if we had a LiDAR scan that was getting, which a LiDAR scan is a 3D geo of the scene, and it's picked up by a laser. So if we had a LiDAR scan and we were doing a projection onto the architecture, it would have to match exactly. There couldn't be any shifting in the content. So right, let's have a look just one more minute down here. Similar kind of thing. We have the reflection sort of not really continuing down here. And there is a bit of a shift there. As I switch that on and off, you can see this curb edge just shifting up. Again, here, perspective doesn't really match. The brightness has changed compared to here, and there's really just no reason why that should be replaced. Again, super easy to do. We just remove that element of the patch and then paint back in just the element that we need to actually remove, and then you've obviously got to integrate, and there's like I said before, there's a luminance difference there, so it's not really blending in properly. Cool. So you've done a great job through here. This is the kind of stuff that we want to see more of. You've replaced you've removed the gas heater. You've replaced the shadow. All of this is sort of gone, and we have this structure coming through. We could probably continue this down here. So if I go like, let's go here. So this should probably come down here, although you should always reference other pylons. So we do have a bit of a kink out. So maybe that was actually... Yeah, I would say that's not too bad. It's probably just a bit too much of a kink. And then we have a bit of a shift in the edge here, so always make sure that those sort of edges don't shift around. You want that to be absolutely straight. Cool. Hey, Victor. Right, since Victor has joined, if you're there, Victor, at the moment, jump in the Twitch server and come down to the voice channel, and you can join us in the voice channel. So I'm just going to have a look at one more, and since Victor's there, I will grab his, assuming it's also high enough resolution.
I will have to go in a second, Conrad. I am so sorry.
That's all right, man. You're working today?
Yeah, I get in like 5 minutes or something.
Oh, that seems like a long commute.
Yeah, it's all the way from my living room into my office.
Yeah, I used to joke about my commute. It was like, 1.5 meters because I'd roll out of bed and just sit in my chair. That was way back when I was just straight out of uni, and I was still freelancing, and you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know. I've been there with the one-room studio apartment.
Yeah, that's it. And whenever you have to do, because I started in 3D environments, so whenever I had to do a 3D render, I would commandeer all of the PCs in the house and just render farm on them overnight. And then I wake up in the morning, or actually more accurately, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and just to check the renders and make sure everything's running.
I know how it is.
I don't miss those days. And to be honest, I don't even miss the days of like setting a render like in studio, and you think you've got this huge render farm. You're like it'll come out and look more amazing, and I'll be able to like do all the paint over work tomorrow. And you get back in the next day and something errored at like 8:15 that night. You're like, God damn it! Like, and you just have to start it all over again.
But yeah, see you in the Discord, guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining, man. We'll chat soon.
Yeah, bye.
For those of you who don't know Stefan, he's a compositor who's turned into MattePainter. We helped him to get a job at Mr. X, and then I can't remember who the next place was that he worked at. But he's now back in Denmark and working remotely for them. So he kind of has some weird hours. But he's a really great resource if you are wondering about nuke projections, nuke tracking, card setups, 3D setups, that kind of thing. Definitely send him a message, or just ask him some questions. So let's have a look at this one here. So we've got here and. So this one will be the last one that we review. It will be why is that not copying? Come on. This is Victor's version. We've got a bit of a color space issue going here.
Interesting.
Yep.
Oh, Is it working now?
Yes, it's working.
Yay!
Hooray.
Sorry.
Hey, how are you going?
Finally.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Just happy it's finally working. Okay.
So did you how was your session with Ian, by the way? Did you guys mostly cover this this patch job?
We covered the previous one, the one from London.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes,
So,
of course.
Yeah, basically it was that when I got his session, I asked him could he give me something to test on so he can check how I'm doing with it and everything. So yeah, he reviewed that one, and he showed me also some tricks and tips what I used in this one, like replacing the whole patch for the house instead of trying to figure out what's behind the people in the far background and things like that.
Oh yeah, awesome. It's those sorts of complex patches when you have nothing there that are the real challenge. You know, it's all about understanding how to reconstruct the scene in a technical sense that matches the plate, because it's up to interpretation of what would be there, what kind of stains or colors would be there, and you've really only got the reference plate to go by. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of you have to be clever. That's what I learned from Ian. Now it's like just be cheeky.
Yeah.
Thinking ahead.
Cool. So the whole reason I picked this image was that it had some hidden challenges, particularly in the wet nature of the ground here, because we have these very obvious, well, not very obviously subtle reflections, but if they're not there, things start to look a bit wonky. So Victor's just said like this left hand side was really difficult, so I hope that if you've tried this yourself, you've started with the easier stuff, and then get to that last bit.
Yeah, I wanted to cry by the front foregrounds like that.
Yeah. So here again, Victor, like with the other feedback I've given, let's just bring this in, see if this will work. Some of the you want to make sure that the elements that you're replacing are only the elements that need to be replaced.
That doesn't matter, it's alright.
1 second.
And okay, so Lasma, I'm just going to turn you down a bit so that the feedback's not coming through. Yeah, so through here, if I switch this on and off, what we want to do is make sure that with your plate, your patch plate, you're just using that section there and across, and leaving the original wall intact, like that. And then the challenge then is to integrate the stain into the patch that you've got. And what we have here is actually a little bit too soft compared to the original wall. We even over here, we're still seeing these horizontal lines. So you want to make sure that you keep those in the image. Let's move on up here. Again, yeah, same thing here as Roel's version. Like you've done well over here, and that we don't have too much. We don't have that much movement in the piece, in this piece. Although we have got a little bit of a shrinking of these elements. I think that's probably the way that you've keyed them out or something, because it kind of looks like a key or like a light wrap, because it's sort of very consistent amongst the whole image. It's not happening over here though, which is good. So you just want those to be the same, but the major area would be this part here. So we've got this element here. Really, all this needed in that area is if we just take the original plate, we can just paint this out there, and then just paint the sky out, and paint it in, paint that sky out around the edge of it. And really, in a visual effects environment, the sky, I would expect there to be a key for it. So I mean, it does, obviously it depends on the context and what is the shot actually being used for. So yeah, this is really all that this piece needed, was just to, in that area, is to just get rid of the surrounding element, like that. And there's a little bit of wiggling there, but no problem, Lasma. I know that sometimes mics play up and headphones play up. Okay, so let's look through here. Oh, that's interesting. So you've actually gone through and attempted a full recreation of this area, which is really great to see. Like, wasn't expecting anyone to try and do that. I think that this left-hand sculpture is a little bit too bright, considering, like, even down here where it's not occluded by this structure. It's sort of, your shadow values here are a little bit lighter up here, so they don't quite match. And then your perspective on this element, I think this is great to have tried, but the perspective just doesn't quite like fit into that perspective. You can kind of see it in this section through here, where we have like that curve there, and then this curve here. If we were to straighten those out by just drawing a straight line between here and here, let's see if we can, come on, let's go on top there, like that. Notice how this straight line here is slightly out of that perspective. So they're kind of converging towards us over here, rather than converging into the distance down to the left. And then obviously the same thing over here. We have this, and if I line those two corners up, they're kind of diverging as they go away. So, but nonetheless, like, really great work at attempting that. I think, even when you fail, you learn a few extra skills that you won't even know. Cool. So through here, let's have a look at. Yep, this is really great. Potentially just a little bit of an edge there, which isn't lining up. In the background here, we do have a bit of a. Oh no, that's not too bad. That's just that. Like, I was looking at the noise here and thinking, why is that changing? But that's because we have two different sampled JPEG files, so of course the noise will be different. It looks like you've gone in and actually adjusted the chromatic aberration, which is really good to see. Again, that would already be done. You wouldn't actually get that much aberration once the plate's been processed and in your hands. You shouldn't really see any. Cool. So through here, got this sort of piece here. I'm I think that actually ends there, like that little shape, and we've got kind of a shadow sort of extending out, so that looks a bit strange. But at least, like, in terms of perspective, the bricks and that, they all seem to be lined up really well. You did forget the reflection of the bird here, but again, like, you know, if you've attempted your replacement of this section here, then the chances are replacing that reflection is not going to be very difficult for you. So not a big fuss there. So let's have a look here for the last thing. Cool. Yeah, I think this is really good. Just make sure that this edge through here, you're not repeating the same thing again. Even if you were just to knock that out and just make a different sort of shape with it. So notice how now when we compare this to this, there's no repeat element there. At least not one that's obvious enough. Okay, let's have a look here. Yeah, so I mean, this is probably the most comprehensive of all of the patches that I've seen. So I'm not surprised if you had difficulty, because in some of the other patches we haven't seen. Let's see if this one, no, that one doesn't. Some of these other reflections haven't been replaced, and you've gone and tried to rebuild everything sort of as accurately as possible, which is great to see. And even, you know, the jacket of this girl here is clearly making this section of the image a sort of warmer purplish bright color, and you've tried to remove that. I would say all this really needed though is a couple of layers over the top to adjust the color and the luminance. So if we go like this, right, so let's get a bit of each of these colors. Let's go with like something like this, just to sort of add a bit of color noise to this area. So I've done basically that. If I zoom in, and now to get rid of the luminance, you can do the same thing with luminosity, and this doesn't always work, but let's have a look. Paint that in there, and I'm just gonna like blur it out. This, we could also do this with a like a multiply, and then try and like tweak this into the right realm. You could do it with a curves layer, you could do it with levels. There's 100 ways you can do these sorts of things. See how that there, if we compare that to your patch, see how it's much closer to the original. Like, all we've done here is just go boom, let's take out that reflection. So when you're working on these sorts of patches, think about the way that the light is actually getting added to the scene, and then see if you can reverse that. So if you've got a light that's spilling onto like a reflection, or even a flashlight that's on a wall, if you can remove and by subtracting that light from the wall, then you can effectively return the wall to its unlit state, or its unreflected state, without actually replacing the content. Then when it comes to replacing like the actual blocking geometry, you can then source other elements and that sort of thing. So even through here, there may be ways for us to simply brighten that layer and change the color to match the surroundings. So let's quickly give it a go. We'll paint this color in. So I'm sampling the color next to it, paint that in there. I won't worry about this, I'm just going to worry about that patch there. And then we'll add another layer. In this case, I'll go with lighten, sample this area, and let's see if we paint that in. This may not work because it may just replace. See how we're sort of losing this this noise? We don't want to lose all of that noise. Then if we just turn that off and just bump it in, not too bad actually. Like with a bit more work, we could bring this noise back in, but really some of this is JPEG artifacting, so you know, there's a bit of give and take there. So you can see that what we did was we went, okay, how is this surface being affected by the fact that she's there? Because the actual content that we're looking at is physically there. We're not being blocked by someone in front of it. So we can then reverse engineer that and say, okay, well, there's a color difference, there's a saturation difference, and there's a luminance difference. And we can just step by step remove those things and bring it back to what it might have looked like before that. So lastly would be this main patch here, and I think you've done a pretty good job. It's obviously not quite successful enough, but to be honest, I don't know how I would have gone with this same thing. I wasn't really expecting anyone to really, you know, nail it, because we have a shift in sharpness as we go to the edge of the lens, and it's not really clear where that shift in the sharpness begins and ends. So, you know, what you've got here, basically, this element through here, this little patch element, is the main thing that stands out in that regard, because you've got soft features here, sharp features there, but then halfway between you've also got soft features in here. So that's just kind of, you've got this little sort of sharpness area through there to fix up. But at least, you know, for the most part, it looks like all of your brick lines, they all match up. The colors seem right. You've tried to rebuild this this reflection. I think some of that potentially could be. Let's have a look over here. So this sort of continues and just fades out. So this could be extended. We've kind of got a dark bit through here, and that could just be extended all the way through. But I think overall, you've done really well to replace a lot of that. So Victor said, for the noise and aberration, it's because I clean the plate before and after and recreate the noise and the aberration. Yeah, so that's a really good process to just get in the habit of. You should, the sorts of things that you should be checking with your work is when you import the images to work on, you should absolutely make sure that you are in 16-bit. If you're not, come up to image mode and go to 16-bit. Even if you're working with JPEGs, you want to work in 16-bit. If you have any questions about that, ask them in the Discord server. I'm happy to direct you to the appropriate videos and sort of that sort of thing. So you check that you're in 16-bit, then go through and check your noise, check the quality of the aberration. If you've taken the shot yourself, make sure that you understort the image by coming to the lens correction. Most images will have the lens correction data in here, so it'll just apply the best undistortion that it can do. And then once you've done all of those steps, then you can work onto the next stage of looking at the actual image and replacing the contents. So if there's any other last questions from anyone, it's getting a bit late. I've been up for over, I actually can't even think right now. I think I've been up working for like 18 hours, so I'm ready to go to sleep. But yeah, if there's any other questions, obviously join the Discord channel and just drop any questions you've got. Our next challenge, like I said earlier, we're going to just build on this. What we'll probably do is we'll provide the best patch image, and we'll just provide that to everyone so that everyone has like the same starting point to move forward. And we'll probably we'll add a story to the building at some point, and maybe add some kind of content in the scene, and see if we can get like add reflections to the ground, that kind of thing. Cool. Thanks again, guys, for joining. It was not as exciting as some of the other streams that we can do, but I think these, like I said earlier, these sorts of sessions, or these sorts of skills are so much more commonly used than like blending 10 photos into one amazing composition. I mean, that stuff's more fun, but this is more common. Cool. Until next time, guys. We'll see you later.